So Minnesota lost 23-26. They fall to 6-3, while Kansas City actually improves to 6-3. So statistically, Matt Moore, 25 of 35, excuse me for that. 275 yards, 7.9 average, one touch, no pick, was sacked 5 times for 45 yards lost, which means Minnesota only gets docked for allowing 230 yards today, and posted a quarterback rating of 103.9. Now, Damian Williams, 12 carries, 125 yards, 10.4 average, obviously had the long 91-yard touchdown. Outside of that, we didn't get much out of the Kansas City rushing game. LaShawn McCoy, 3 carries for 9 yards, Hardman, 1 for 7, and Tyreek Hill, 1 for 5. Then you also have Darrell Williams in there for 1 for 1. So total of 18 carries, 147 yards, 8.2 average, and the 191-yard score. Now, receptions and things of this nature, this is where I think the bigger problem probably was, which was Tyreek Hill, 6 of 8 targets for 140 yards, touchdown, longest was 41 yards, and averaged 23.3 yards a catch. Watkins, 7 of 10 for 63, 9.0 yards per catch. Travis Kelce, 7 of 9 for 62 yards, so that's 8.9 average. Demarcus Robinson, 1 of 2 for 5. Damian Williams, 2 of 2 for 3. Blake Bell caught his only lone target for 2 yards, and McCoy and Williams were targeted but didn't get any yards off of it. So on third down, they were 4 of 13. That is 31%. They were 100% on fourth down, getting it the one time they did go for it. They were 0 of 2 in the red zone, so obviously 0%. And they were -1 in the turnover margin. They had 4 penalties for 25 yards and 31 minutes and 48 seconds of time of possession. Now, going over to Minnesota, now Cousins had a bit of a weird day today. 19 of 38 for 220 yards, 5.8 average, had 3 touchdowns and no interceptions, though. He was sacked once for 8 yards and 94.2 quarterback rating. And since the 8 yards are in there, Minnesota gets credit for throwing for 212 yards today as a team. Now, carrying the ball, not as much success as we have seen in the past, more recent weeks during the 4-game winning streak, which is now obviously done. But Cook carried it 21 times for 71 yards, a 3.4 average. Didn't score, long of 12. Diggs, 1 for 12 yards. Madison, 3 for 6. Cousins, 1 for 5. Abdullah, 1 for 2. So that's a total of 27 carries for 96 yards and a 3.6 average. And the longest run was 12, matched by both Cook and Diggs. Treadwell actually led the team in receiving yards today and stuff, but that can be viewed as a big problem. He was 3 of 5 for 58 yards and 19.3 average, had a long of 26. Cook, 4 of 7 for 45, 11.3 yards a catch, and a long of 22. CJ Ham got involved with a 32-yard, I want to say screen is the best way to put it, and averaged 18.5 yards a catch for 37 yards. Irv Smith caught 4 of 6 for 33. Rudolph, 3 of 5 for 23 yards and a score. Abdullah caught his only target for a 16-yard touchdown pass. Olabisi was targeted twice, only caught the 1 touchdown for 4 yards and the score. And then Diggs is probably the most telling one. 1 of 4, 4 yards. That's it. That's not good. Obviously, Thielen got the 0 of 1 after the one of those throws where it's like, you should probably catch that, but that needs to be a better throw kind of deal. He came out after that with the hamstring, kind of re-aggravated it, which is probably one of the more predictable things that happened today. Madison didn't catch his only target. So they are 5 of 15 on third down, so 33%. 1 of 1 on fourth down, so like the Chiefs, they got their only fourth down conversion attempt. They were 3 of 4 in the red zone, actually, so converting 75% of the times, and +1 in the turnover margin. They had 3 flags for 25 penalty yards and held the ball for 28 minutes and 12 seconds. So, yes, fun times. Let's get into the whole thoughts portion. I thought play calling was kind of weird today. It feels like they kind of were fighting their identity today, which was a little weird. And Kirk having, some will say, bad day. I don't know if it was necessarily like horrible, horrible. It was definitely inefficient, but he didn't turn the ball over, so efficient in that stat, I guess. And he also did throw 3 touchdowns, which we did have the lead going into that last drive. So interesting. Oh, before that last drive. So don't know if you can call those the empty calorie stats that a lot of people like to throw at Cousins. So it's been a weird day for Kirk, but him being inefficient didn't help at all, along with the play calling being kind of like almost like they were fighting their identity all day, where it's like, oh, sometimes they looked like they were back to it, sometimes they didn't. In the first half, they definitely didn't. Third quarter, I feel like they kind of looked more like it, but then they held the ball forever, and then they kind of fell away from it again, and then it was weird. And then the last drive, um, you had an incomplete pass, which was batted down, which wouldn't have gotten many yards anyway. So you had a blown up tight end screen to Irv Smith, another incomplete pass, and then on fourth down, you had a shanked punt by Colquitt, which put them at our own 45, and they were and it was tied. So that's a big problem, obviously. So I part of it there had to be play calling. I'm not going to blame Kirk every time. Like, that's the easy, lazy way out. It's not just Kirk Cousins that was a problem today of some form. I thought play calling was also like, I'm not sure I'm feeling it. But that's how it is. We couldn't move Chris Jones or Nadi to actually get the run game and Dalvin Cook going. And then you probably should have gotten a little bit more creative with how you got the ball into your playmakers' hands. You started to see that a little bit. Like I said, it kind of seemed like in the third quarter, you kind of saw a little bit more of that where they were throwing like, oh, let's get Dalvin Cook some screen passes. Let's do a little end around to Diggs. Let's, those types of things where you just get the playmaker the ball in their hands. So I feel like that was a little bit better. And they actually won the turnover battle and the red zone conversion rate, which is kind of weird when you say, like, oh no, you won those 2 things and you still lost. Doesn't happen very often. But defensively, there were obviously too many big plays allowed. But aside from the big plays, I don't think you can be too critical of this defense. They were 31% on their third downs. They were 0 of 2 in the red zone, and if you were to, it's really just the big plays that were an issue to me, because Tyreek Hill, pretty much every time he caught the ball, you're talking like 20 yards down the field, if not 30 or 40. And then the 91-yard touchdown run that they allowed, if you take that one run away, they have a total of 56 yards today. As a whole, they didn't play horribly today, but there were just those lapses in where they allowed the big plays. So there was more of a lack of efficiency and consistency on both sides today, which is really interesting a little bit. And yeah, special teams, obviously a Bailey missed extra point hurt quite a bit. Hughes did make a nice play on Mecole Hardman to get the fumble to start the half. And then you also have the last punt, which that cannot happen. A little surprised that happened with a veteran like, Colquitt. But I imagine him punting like that is more of an anomaly than something that we can actually be concerned about. And I guess in terms of being concerned about, I think Diggs didn't fumble today. So how about that? Nice job him on that. No fumbling of the football. So overall, I think this was just a really weird game, but obviously, like, if you were just a football fan, it was a pretty entertaining game. But I think there are good and bad things from this game. Obviously, like I said, you won the turnover battle. You won in the red zone. You did those things. Because like I said, you're comparing 3 of 4, 75% of your red zone to a team that you did lose to, but they were 0 of 2. So you did win the red zone battle a little bit there too. But you also lost the time of possession battle. You obviously lost the point battle, but there were good and bad things to take away. So it's a little bit interesting. And if we got a little bit more efficient on either side, or maybe we just don't allow the big plays on defense. Like if one of those big plays doesn't happen, we win this football game. If Kirk Cousins completes maybe like 3 of those like 87 throws he threw today that were intended for a power forward out in the flats, maybe we win this game. Like it was one of those kinds of games where it's like you can't, they weren't out of it, which is really like that's the one major sign I want to say that tells me like, no, don't worry, the sky isn't falling. It was just a very weird, inefficient day. Because despite how bad things were going, they still had plenty of chances to win this football game. So even when they're at their worst, they have their chances, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So even though they're 6-3, we still need to get to. My personal opinion, you need to get to 8-3 at the bye because that last month is terrifying. But I just don't think the sky is necessarily falling. It just this loss puts a lot more pressure on the fact that you probably need to go into Dallas, and that's a must-win game. If you won today, you can afford a loss at Dallas. And I guess if you say if you're going to lose either this game or next week, if you are, let's just say you do go 1-1 in that stretch, regardless, you would probably pick this game to lose out of the two, just because, well, it's AFC and that doesn't really affect all your tiebreakers and such. So there is that. That's one benefit. But obviously, there are things that they need to clean up, like the fact that Kirk wasn't efficient. The play calling was weird, and you got to fix, obviously, those big plays that they allowed. Like, not saying this was necessarily a good game just because I'm looking for something to be hopeful about necessarily, but it does feel like, well, this isn't necessarily the worst thing. Because you knew at some point they were going to lose a game. Let's be honest. I don't think anyone anticipated. Oh no, Vikings 14-2 after things. I don't think that was going to happen. I just kind of anticipated. I kind of thought they would win this one. They did not, but it's okay. And I would like to know your comments down below. Liking, subscribing, all the good stuff that always helps. And until next time, I bid you all adieu.